One of our cutters heard just Mayday, Mayday, and that's all we heard.
Oh, look, an explosion. We turned in what looks like fireworks, and then all of a sudden it turned into this big orange fireball.
I pulled out of the water myself a fully inflated life preserver. There was no body in it, but it was fully strapped, which there was a body in it evidently.
An electrostatic spark ignited the plane's center wing tank, is considered the leading theory in the investigation.
On July 17, 1996, Transworld Airlines Flight 800 left New York's Kennedy Airport en route to Paris. 12 minutes later, that flight ended in tragedy. 10 miles off the coast of Long Island on that still, clear summer night, a powerful explosion sent the 747 jumbo jet into a tranquil Atlantic Ocean. The subsequent investigation cost more than $35 million, examining a host of questions. Did radar reveal signs of a missile approaching the plane? Did explosive residue in the wreckage indicate a terrorist attack? Did the 747 harbor a fatal engineering flaw? After 4 years of study, the National Transportation Safety Board has issued its final report. A wiring flaw, say board members, was the probable cause of the accident. But independent analysts have disputed the government's conclusions. And in the following hour, we'll hear from many of those drawn to the case. Government officials, independent investigators, eyewitnesses, and family members of the victims. TWA 800, the search for the truth.
This is a special report from ABC News.
Good evening. This is Chris Wallace at ABC News headquarters in Washington, where we have just gotten the first sketchiest details of an apparent air tragedy. A TWA jetliner flight 800 bound from New York to Paris, leaving from Kennedy Airport on Long Island, has apparently crashed in the Atlantic. There you can see the map, and it apparently crashed in the Atlantic.
507, I'm sorry, I missed it. You're at 18, did you say something else?
We just saw an explosion behind us here. Someone about 16,000 feet or something like that. It just went down.
Chaos reigns in the Islip Air Traffic Control Center.
It's a that out of my 9 o'clock position. We just had an explosion out there about 5 miles away, 6 miles away.
This is among the world's busiest air traffic corridors. TWA took off late in the place of an Israeli El Al flight. Has Flight 800 become the mistaken target of a Middle Eastern terrorist attack?
We are directly over the site with that airplane, or whatever it was, just exploded and went into the water.
Could friendly fire be involved? Early reports suggest that the U.S. Navy has activated Whiskey 105, part of the U.S. military's massive giant killer offshore testing range. Has a war game gone terribly wrong?
TWA 800, Center.
I think that was him.
I think so.
My older sister Nan called at 10:30 and said, turn on the TV. There's been a plane crash, TWA Flight 800, and I think Andy was on it. My husband, who's in the Navy, was on a fast attack submarine, the USS Pittsburgh. They were in the Mediterranean, so I didn't have his support. And then I went into the kitchen, I laid down on the floor, and it felt like someone punched me in the stomach.
In the wake of the catastrophe, the National Transportation Safety Board, under Chairman Jim Hall, sends expert traffic investigators to Long Island. They're joined by agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, under the supervision of the FBI Assistant Director, James Kallstrom.
You can email us at newyork@fbi.gov for any citizens out there that have anything they want to tell us about this investigation.
The task is daunting. Tons of debris scattered for miles along the ocean floor, and a flood of phone calls from local residents. More than 750 people claim to have witnessed the final seconds of the flight. Approximately 250 describe seeing an object approach the aircraft in the moments before it exploded. 96 of those witnesses describe seeing an object rise from the surface and impact TWA 800.
It was this brittle shatter white puffball on the side of the plane, and I'm very relieved because I figured that it didn't impact on the plane, so the plane will be all right. But at the same time, I see this other object that's coming up from underneath the plane in the shadow of the plane that looks just like this other object had been. And then the plane stopped in the middle of the sky from where it was, and it's just stopped there in the sky, and then it goes down, and then I can see all along the spine of the plane, and then the plane shatters.
Started to head outbound towards the horizon, and it was traveling with increasing speed, and traversed and went outbound until it got to about 10 degrees or so above the horizon. I lost track of it for about a second or two in between. I saw a flash, then I saw another flash which was appeared to come up from the horizon. All of that action eventually culminated in a huge fireball, a yellow fireball. And that fireball just dropped into the ocean like a rock and left a black smoke trail on its way down into, to the horizon. I called the U.S. Coast Guard. I got the Mauritius Coast Guard station, told them my name, said I just witnessed a fire and explosion offshore, gave them my position. And I was immediately told that that was the Air National Guard firing flares tonight. And I said, nope, this wasn't a flare. This looked like somebody shot themselves in the foot.
I saw what appeared to be the sort of course and trajectory that you see when a shooting star enters the atmosphere.
I saw a streak of light moving to my left, almost horizontally across the sky, but with a gradually ascending arc. It was moving very rapidly. And then on the same trajectory, slightly further to the left, I saw a high-velocity explosion. Approximately 2 to 3 seconds later, further to the left, and slightly lower than the initial trajectory, I saw a second high-velocity explosion, and it was brilliant white light.
What if you had to bet the store or the farm? What was it? Where was it from?
It was a rocket motor of some kind. Remember, my experience with missiles goes back to the late 1960s. And a missile that would fly in the 1960s, except for a SAM-1 or SAM-2, which were very big and very heavy. The smaller missiles, SAM-7s, things of that nature, those are designations for Soviet Union missiles, would have an infrared homing system, and they would have an erratic flight path. So when you saw a missile fly through the sky, you'd see this very squirrely, erratic flight path. And what I saw was a smooth arc. And what I saw explode in the sky was definitely military ordnance. I have enough experience with it to know what it looks like. And I saw 1, 2, 3, 4 explosions before I saw the fireball. So the fuel in this aircraft eventually exploded, but the explosion of the fuel was the last event, not the initiating event. The initiating event was a high-velocity explosion, not fuel. It was ordnance.
Happened to look out the window. I happened to notice down to the lower right side of my field of vision what appeared to be some kind of a flare-like object, and it appeared to be climbing. And I continued to watch it probably for about 7 to 10 seconds. It appeared to be climbing, and just as it peaked at its apex, I saw what appeared to be a small explosion, ball of flame, red, yellow, orange colors, dark, different shades within it. Oh, and then maybe about a second or two later, if even that long, it became a much larger ball of flame, much larger explosion. The gentleman that was behind me on the U.S. Air Flight indicated, I was reading in one of the statements, he said he saw the cabin lights of Flight 800
just prior to the explosion. So, you know, the timing is perfect as far as what I saw, the flare-like object that I saw, him seeing Flight 800, and then the explosion, and then, you know, it all went from there.
It proceeded from behind the roof line up on a 35 degree angle, and it appeared to be going parallel to the shoreline, but maybe a little bit out to sea. It varied in its elevation. At sideways, it zigzagged. One up on like about a 30 degree angle outward, arced over and disappeared. And a couple seconds later, a big orange ball erupted in the sky.
A tangled mess of switches, seats, and secrets. The cockpit of Flight 800 raised from the ocean floor. Will the shattered section finally reveal what brought down a mighty airliner?
We know there was an explosion on the airplane, and the scenarios are there was a bomb on the plane was hit with a rocket, or there was a mechanical, electrical, or some malfunction on the plane that caused the plane to explode.
This was by nobody's account a typical crash investigation. It was the FBI, not the NTSB, that oversaw the reconstruction of TWA 800 in a hangar in Calverton, New York. FBI investigators oversaw the handling and examination of evidence. It was the FBI that interviewed all witnesses.
CNN called
Dr. Vernon Gross is a former member of the National Transportation Safety Board.
Early this morning, we were hearing that the FBI had taken the lead in the investigation. Now we're hearing they may take the lead in the investigation. That's not unprecedented, of course, with the FBI in the lead of an airline disaster, but it is unusual, is it not?
Well, I actually think it's unprecedented because by a mandate of the Congress, there is one body, the National Transportation Safety Board, that is entirely charged with the investigation of any transportation accident.
Several radar sites were monitoring the airspace off Long Island, capturing on tape the final moments of the flight. But none of those images surfaced publicly until a VHS tape appeared in the mailbox of veteran pilot Richard Russell. Allegedly radar data from JFK Airport, leaked by an old colleague inside the crash investigation.
I knew that there was something wrong, something that was amiss. A controller had identified a target on the videotape as a missile. The FBI came to my home and removed it under a subpoena from the grand jury. I said that it would probably be dubbed as a fraud, and they did. The next few days, they said no, it was a true tape.
1 month after the tragedy, the lead story in the New York Times, sophisticated FBI explosive detecting gear has identified traces of high explosives in a dozen locations on the plane's right side. The test was conducted as long as 2 weeks ago, investigators said. But instead of announcing the finding then, FBI officials decided to take extraordinary precautions to keep the findings secret as long as possible.
Federal officials disputed a report in the New York Times which claimed the front landing gear contained evidence that a bomb went off inside the plane. And an analysis of the cargo bin and fuselage retrieved Monday has not turned up any evidence of chemical residue as officials had hoped.
The NTSB and the Federal Aviation Administration are overseen by the Congressional Subcommittee on Transportation.
On February 10th, we began construction of a three-dimensional reconstruction of 92 feet of the aircraft. This is one of our metallurgists standing in the wing tank. When finished, this construction will be the largest in the world. In these pictures, which were taken on March 6th, over 70 feet of aircraft have been reassembled.